Hello, everyone, and welcome to WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, let's take a look at the latest stories making headlines this hour. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says that his ruling ANC party has resolved to quit the International Criminal Court. Last month, the ICC had issued an arrest warrant against Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is likely to attend the BRICS summit in South Africa. Sweden's foreign ministry says, quote, 5 officials at the Russian embassy in Sweden are being asked to leave the country due to unspecified activities that are not compatible with the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. Reacting to U.S. President Joe Biden's 2024 White House announcement, Donald Trump hits out, calls Biden administration a failure on multiple fronts. Kenyan investigators unearthed another 16 bodies on Tuesday in a forest where a cult was believed to be practicing mass starvation, bringing the number of victims so far to 89, including children. And a 4-time NFL MVP Aaron Rodgers is set to join the New York Jets in a blockbuster trade from the Green Bay Packers. The quarterback said in March that he intended to end his 18-year spell with the Packers. U.S. President Joe Biden has finally announced his re-election bid. The 80-year-old incumbent, who is already the oldest president in U.S. history, has long signaled that he would announce his re-election bid for 2024. He would be 86 if he wins and completes his second term by 2029. In the early hours of this morning, the Democrat leader formally launched his campaign in a video. Now, with Biden officially entering the race, there's a possibility of a 2020 rematch with former President Donald Trump. After spending the weekend with aides at Camp David, the presidential retreat in Maryland, he opted to launch his campaign on the 4th anniversary of his 2020 announcement. As of now, he has no major challengers for the Democratic nomination, except for a bid already launched by Robert Kennedy Jr. and self-help author Marianne Williamson. Recent polls, however, suggest that his decision to run is a divisive one both within and outside of his party. An NBC News poll over the weekend found that 70% of Americans, 70, and just over half of Democrats believe that he should not run again. Previous polls held this year also indicate a similar trend. The majority of people who said Biden should not run cite his age as a concern. 48% said it was a major concern. Despite the polls, Biden's hope of re-election were boosted last year when his party performed better than expected in the midterm elections. The Republican Party, meanwhile, has reacted to Joe Biden's re-election announcement, calling him out of touch of the 2024 race. The Republican National Committee said, quote, Biden is so out of touch that after creating crisis after crisis, he thinks he deserves another 4 years. Well, for more on this, we earlier spoke with White House commentator and U.S. political analyst Christopher Bua from Washington, D.C. Here's what he had to say.
Well, I think his chances are great. He's going to beat Trump handily again, as he did in 2020. There's a rematch. Trump is a disaster. He wants to take this country onto a very extremist, populist, some may say fascist bent, eliminating freedoms, putting guns out on the street, cutting any rules to ensure women have a safe access to health care. And Joe Biden is a man of the people, and he will be fighting for the soul of America. And he believes in personal freedoms. He doesn't believe in MAGA and the Trump nonsense. And Donald Trump, if you've ever seen the two of them together, there's no question about age. Joe Biden may be 4 years older than Trump, But Trump is a disaster. He can hardly move. And I got to tell you, he's not a healthy man.
Since the war broke out between Russia and Ukraine, scores of nations have put sanctions on Russia in a bid to weaken its economy and put an end to its invasion of Ukraine. In the latest attempt to hamper Moscow's bid to invade Kyiv, a plan made by the United States to end all G7 exports to Russia has been met with a roadblock as part of the negotiations ahead of a summit of the world's most advanced economies. According to a report filed by the Financial Times, the European Union and Japan have pushed back against the U.S. proposal. EU and Japanese diplomats say Washington's proposal is simply not doable. According to the document seen by the news outlet, a G7 leaders' statement is being drafted for the next month's meeting in Hiroshima. The statement includes a pledge to replace the current sector-by-sector sanction regime against Russia with a complete export ban and only a few exemptions. The full export ban would include exemptions for agriculture and medical and other products. The G7 leaders will meet in Hiroshima on May 19th for a three-day summit. The focus of the meeting will be on the effects of Russia's war against Ukraine, economic security, green investments, and the Indo-Pacific region. Meanwhile, the proposal made by the U.S. comes amidst Washington's rising frustration with the existing system riddled with loopholes, allowing Russia to continue to import Western technology. But representatives from Japan and the EU countries suggested in a preparatory meeting last week that such a move would not be feasible, in addition to the fact that the officials say replacing the regime with a full export ban plus exemptions can risk reopening the debates where some of the member states secured exemptions for their industries by threatening to veto the restrictions, and the potential weakening of already existing measures where they agreed on 10 packages of sanctions on Russia. Meanwhile, in the wake of the response made by its allies, the White House National Security Council has declined to comment on conversations within the G7 partners, but said that the U.S. would continue to look for ways to hold Russia accountable. The disagreement over the measures underscores the lack of additional options available to G7 leaders as they seek to increase the economic punishment for Vladimir Putin's regime after 14 months of war. Okay, well, for more on this, we are joined by Edward P. Joseph, Senior Fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and Foreign Policy Analyst. He is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Welcome back to WION. Well, disagreements over the proposed plan highlight how G7 leaders are scrambling to find effective ways to penalize Vladimir Putin over his invasion of Ukraine. But here we are now with some rifts. What are your thoughts?
I don't think there's anything to be shocked about here, that there would be divisions within the G7. What the U.S. is asking for is a complete blanket ban, and that's the most comprehensive approach that you can possibly take. And the fact that Japan and others are voicing concerns about the feasibility of that, I don't think there's anything to be surprised about that. A completely comprehensive ban is the most you can do, possibly. And what I think this does is the U.S. position opens up the possibility for productive negotiations in advance of this G7 meeting that you mentioned next month. And we will see substantial increases in the sectors that the G7 leaders agree will be very strictly applied to Russia. And I would note here that we've seen progress in this area. For example, South Korea just increased by about 750 the categories of items that it is banning on export to Russia. And again, we see Russia's belligerent stance where it responds with violent threats against this instead of countering and negotiating in the economic sphere. Please.
Thank you. Edward P. Joseph, Senior Fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and Foreign Policy Analyst from Washington, D.C. Thank you for those comments and that insight.
You're welcome.
Russia's month-long UN Security Council presidency was never going to be a smooth ride. As more and more sessions are being conducted and concluded, we find all speculations of confrontations turning into reality. To begin with, Kyiv's allies slammed Russia for a Security Council meeting on protecting the UN Charter and multilateralism. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov chaired the meeting in the presence of UN Chief Antonio Guterres. Seated next to Lavrov, Guterres said the risk of conflict between global powers was at, quote, a historic high. The Russian foreign minister, meanwhile, warned that the world was at a threshold, quote, possibly even more dangerous than during the Cold War. Guterres criticized Russia's invasion of Ukraine for causing massive suffering and devastation in the country and fueling a global economic dislocation. Reacting to the developments, Ukraine dismissed Lavrov chairing the meeting on UN Charter as being, quote unquote, a hypocrisy. The United Nations seeks to save an agreement that allows safe Black Sea export of Ukrainian grain. The agreement is set to expire on May 18th. In a meeting with Sergei Lavrov, the UN chief presented a way forward on extending Ukrainian grain exports. Guterres gave Lavrov, quote, a letter to President Vladimir Putin outlining a proposed way forward aimed at the improvement, extension, and expansion of the deal. The agreement has been in place since last July that allows Ukrainian grain to be exported via the Black Sea after they were blocked amid the conflict with Russia. The South African president says the ruling party has resolved that the country should quit the International Criminal Court.
The ICC has made a statement in that regard, and as you well know, we are due to host as South Africa the next BRICS summit in August of this year. And the BRICS summit is often attended by the heads of state as well as ministers and a number of other officials. And in our case, as South Africa, we have tended to have what we call an outreach program where we invite a number of other countries to be part of this. And in our experience, we've often wanted Africa to be part of the BRICS summit. So yes, indeed, having heard what the ICC has said in relation to President Putin, that matter is under consideration and discussion. And I've often said when I'm asked this that when the matter is finalized, we will be able to tell everyone, and hopefully including yourself.
The statement made alongside the Finnish leader, which recently became a NATO member, comes in the backdrop of the upcoming BRICS summit in South Africa later this year. Russian President Vladimir Putin is also invited for the summit, but the International Criminal Court's recent arrest warrant against the Russian president complicates things for Pretoria. The ICC issued an arrest warrant for Putin on March 17th, alleging that Russia's forcible deportation of Ukrainian children amounted to a war crime. Given South Africa's membership of the ICC, the country will be expected to arrest Putin as he enters the territory. But the ruling ANC party seems determined to have Putin's presence at the summit. The African National Congress Party has historic ties with Russia as Moscow supported its struggle against apartheid. So while choosing between Russia and the International Criminal Court, the ruling party seems to have made a choice in Moscow. A day earlier, the Kremlin said that President Vladimir Putin would decide whether to attend the BRICS summit closer to the time. For more on this, we were earlier joined by our correspondent, Kalden Ongmu from Johannesburg.
Yeah, I don't think this comes as a surprise to South Africans itself, because ANC as well as some of the senior government officials have been hinting on withdrawal of ICC. And if that happens and government were to make a final decision of quitting from the ICC, this will be the second time South Africa will be attempting to do that. Now, if you remember in 2015, when South Africa failed to arrest Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, that time as well, it got a lot of criticism from international counterparts, saying that South Africa is not following the rules and the laws of the ICC. What did South Africa do then? They went to the court. They said, we want to quit from the ICC, but the Gauteng High Court here in South Africa said that this decision by the South African government would be unconstitutional. So in 2017, again, South Africa revoked the decision and said, no, we will stay put in the ICC. But that brought a lot of criticism, not just from the international counterparts, but also some of the opposition parties from South Africa.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump faces another court case. This case pertains to allegations of sexual assault by writer E. Jean Carroll. Carroll has accused Trump of raping her in the 1990s, a claim that he denies. The case renews the scrutiny on more than 20 sexual misconduct allegations that have been brought against the former president. It also adds the legal trouble mounting on Trump. The lawsuit filed by Carroll is a civil one. It means Trump would have to pay damages if the jury agrees with her claim. However, this does not put the former president at risk of jail time. Carroll has also asked for Trump to retract the denials that he's made of the rape allegations if she wins the case. The two issues Carroll has raised in the suit include a claim of battery, citing psychological harm she's experienced because of Trump's alleged sexual assault, and a claim of defamation from the comments he's made about her manufacturing the allegations. Lawyers will begin jury selection in the federal court at the Southern District of New York later today. Trump is not required to testify in the trial, which is expected to take place over the next 2 weeks. It's unclear at this point if he will choose to do so or not. A win for Carroll in this case could ultimately send a strong message about Trump's alleged history of alleged sexual assault. It would also highlight the impact of a new law in New York, which allows survivors to pursue a lawsuit involving such allegations years after an incident may have occurred. The case puts allegations of Trump's misconduct towards women back in the spotlight and heightens the focus on his legal woes. According to a Business Insider account, 26 women have accused Trump of sexual misconduct. Apart from this, Trump is also involved in a number of legal woes, right from denying the 2024 election results to financial frauds related to his companies and meddling with classified documents. All of this does not bode well for his 2024 election campaign, or does it?
As Ronnie said, I got every single question. Every day, Biden's incompetence is putting America at risk. As everyone knows, what Putin...
If you have invested in cryptocurrency, we have some news for you. According to a report from Standard Chartered, Bitcoin could hit $100,000 by the end of 2024. It's believed that Bitcoin could gain from various factors, but from the recent turmoil that we've seen in the banking sector, or from the improved profitability of crypto mining. Those are two main reasons. After all, we have seen that Bitcoin has rallied so far this year. It hit $30,000 in April, first time in 10 months. Its gains represent a partial recovery after trillions of dollars were wiped from the crypto sector back in 2022. But here's a concern. Crypto is a volatile asset. Predictions of sky-high valuations have been commonplace during Bitcoin's past rallies. In November 2020, an analyst said Bitcoin could climb as high as $318,000 by the end of 2022. But what happened? It closed last year down about 65% at $16,500. So we can't be certain if Bitcoin would reach the $100,000 mark by the end of 2024. As they say, let's hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. The Shape of You hitmaker Ed Sheeran is expected to take the stand in a case which claims that he owes a share of profits from his hit Thinking Out Loud, from copying Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On. The heirs of Ed Townsend, Gaye's co-writer of the 1973 soul classic, sued Sheeran, alleging that the English pop star's hit tune has striking similarities to Let's Get It On. The lawsuit filed in 2017 has finally made it to a trial that is expected to last a week in the Manhattan federal courtroom of 95-year-old Judge Louis Stanton. Sheeran is among the witnesses expected to testify. Sheeran's attorneys have said that the song's undeniable structural symmetry points only to the foundation of popular music. While the jury will hear the recordings of both songs, their lyrics and vibes are legally insignificant. Jurors are supposed to only consider the raw elements of melody, harmony, and rhythm that make up the composition of Let's Get It On. If the jury finds Sheeran is liable for copyright infringements, the Manhattan court will hold another trial to determine how much he and his label should pay. The first trial is expected to last about a week. But this is not the first time Ed Sheeran is facing a copyright issue. Sheeran won a trial in London last year in a separate copyright case over his hit Shape of You. But so is the case with Ye's heirs. They won a landmark verdict in 2015 over claims that the Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams song Blurred Lines copied Ye's Got to Give It Up. Let's see which side wins the case, which begins today. LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers are closing with WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tefrani. I'll see you soon, but don't go away. More news and headlines coming up next, only on WION World is One.
Many other